I think what I'll start is I'll start asking a general question for all our panelists, and I ask each of them to express their opinion and share their experience. My starting question is, what emerging technology will be the next game changer in the insurance industry in the next 2 to 3 years? What will the insurance industry landscape looks like? How about we start with Hank?
Yeah, Ken. I personally don't think that there will be one single game changer in terms of technology. I think most of us here are looking at similar things. The key strategic IT trends are social, cloud, mobile, analytics. I heard a company recently adding Internet of Things. So I think we now have 5 key technologies that we're all looking at. And I think we need to get our heads around all those technologies, because all of them are important, to see which one technology makes, or a combination of technology makes most sense for our companies. I have a bit of a problem with the whole hype around digital disruption and the fact that tomorrow the world will be completely different, and that if you haven't implemented all of these great technologies today, that you'll potentially be out of business tomorrow because there will be competitors being smarter, there will be outsiders from the industry disrupting the existing insurance industry. Definitely everything is changing, and I think the challenge that we have is that everything is changing extremely fast, and that all of these, especially IT technologies, make sense and have relevance. But I think the trick is to get your head around what makes most sense for your business. If I still were to pick one of the technologies, I would probably pick analytics. I think analytics is one of the more important areas that I think everybody needs to look at. And I think analytics is an underlying technology, whether you want to do things with mobile and bring more capabilities via mobile devices to either your customers or your distributors, whether you want to do more on CRM and create more leads or other capabilities, whether you eventually want to move into social media. I think underlying analytics, whether it's about your internal data or your, let's say, the big data concepts with all the opportunities of data outside, whether it's linked to that's the sensor technology that I think a lot of non-life companies are looking at for either securing homes or getting information on wearables. I think underneath, it's very important that companies start to look at how do we manage that information and how do we create or set up an analytical environment to ensure that eventually we get insights from all those technologies. So my pick would be data and data analytics.
Okay, Matthew?
Sure, I agree a lot with what Hank said. I think I don't think there's going to be one single technology that will really drive everything. I think, and also the point about choosing which is most applicable to your business, to what's going to drive customer value, and important, what are customers prepared to pay for? And I think that in a lot of these emerging technology areas, I think all industries, including insurance, are still working through that question about what are customers really value and what are they prepared to pay for. I think if I was to, I think the analytics point as well is very, very critical one. If I was to choose a couple of other areas where I think emerging technologies are really going to play a big role, it's a continued journey around digitalization, especially into the wearable devices and the Internet of Things. And how consumers and businesses are going to connect multiple things that they do in their daily lives. And I think it will shift what insurance is today, and we're very much focused on the sort of tripartite relationship between customers, intermediaries, whether that's agents or partners or brokers, and the insurance companies. I think it will explode that ecosystem to involve multiple players, as the Internet of Things and the connectivity of people will change how everybody interacts on multiple levels. And I think as insurers, we've got to understand how do we play in that space and how do we make sure we secure value within that space with the customer, because other companies like the Googles, like the Apples, will eat into that space. So I think we need to be aware of what's going on there. We understand how the insurance business works and the value of the insurance to the consumers, and we need to use that to leverage that. I think the second area I would probably focus on, and it's been touched on a little bit, was really about this continued automation of things in insurance. We still have a lot of our operational cost and to an extent lack of flexibility is in we have lots of knowledge workers, whether that's in underwriting, whether that's in claims, and I think the emergence of artificial intelligence and some of the self-learning applications and technologies are out there. I think that will progress rapidly over the next 2 to 3 years, and I think that will create a shift in what can be provided to customers in terms of 24/7 response to the complex queries, but also, and Dwayne talked about in the claims area, actually having self-learning machines that can actually respond to some of the more complex activities in claims. So those are a couple of other areas I would probably highlight.
Thank you. Helen?
So a couple of key focus areas for me are around process automation using robotics. So sitting across 15 countries in Asia Pacific, you see the similar processes being done different ways in different countries, using the same systems even. Combined with our move to a shared operations centre that we already have in the Philippines, we really have to focus on how do we use robotics to make that centre efficient and bring processes to a standardised, cohesive set. Analytics, as mentioned before, how do we drive the customer insights that we can get from that using external data sources rather than continuing to collect reams of data from our customers at all parts of the insurance value chain. I can see that in a couple of years customers aren't going to be patient with us to provide all that data anymore. The data's out there. We need to be much more effective about how we obtain that, how we use it, and how we convert it into inputs in our decision-making and processing aspects of our business. Other major one, obviously, the emergence of Google, Apple, etc. in the insurance industry. That has the ability certainly to disrupt the retail side of the businesses within the next couple of years, and we need to keep a very close eye on that.
Okay, as much as I'm in the IT industry, I actually kind of believe that technology is there for the business. And interestingly, I just came back from a conference, a business conference, where all the leaders from all Asia Pacific gathered together. And there are a few takeaways, and I sort of want to share. They all want to understand customers more. Because of that, what the technology is, they want to do more BI, they want to do business analytics. So I said the technology is needed because the business want to understand the customers more. And I think a business also want to, in the insurance industry, traditionally it's very manual. I think they want more automation, they want more self-service. That it goes back to some of the technology that was shared earlier on, say a lot of the web portals, mobile platforms are there again to automate things, to reach out to the customers more. And also Lockton being, because we are an insurance broker, so we kind of connect between the insurer and the client. So technology, kind of B2B and B2C technology that connects, for example, the brokers and the insurers and clients better. And it's something that we're working on already, and that is, for example, whether it's claim processes, whether it's policy issue, whether it's policy renewal, that usually some sort of portals that the insurers can get onto, the clients can get onto, and the brokers can get onto. And in our case, even the finance can get onto because we handle payment as well. So I think, and all of these are using existing technologies already. And so I sort of look at technology, right? Next year, I'm sure all of you will hear some sort of buzzword that you never heard of before, but it's quite likely it's just an improved version of what we learned before. And I was sharing with somebody, I think I forgot last year, I think all these new term IoT, right? It boils down to artificial intelligence, machine learning that actually started in the 80s because I did a thesis on it. So I guess I'm trying to bring all of us back feet on the ground that there's a lot of technologies out there, but a lot of them are actually improved version of what we heard before or what previous technology grades started in earlier. But I think mobile devices, accessibility to data, all makes all of these technology closer to home, but a lot of them actually not really new ideas.
So it's not one single technology, I think, will game changer, but more of a combination of suite.
Yes. I mean, for example, I definitely see cloud as becoming, I don't see cloud as disruptive. I see it as mainstream. I see BI, business analytics, to continue because business will always want to understand the customers more. They always want to do cross-selling. They always want to make revenue. And how do you do that? I mean, you reach out to your customers. You get to know your prospects. So all boils down to pretty much the same thing.
Okay, thank you. My next question is for Matthew. Matthew, you manage Asia Pacific, 9 countries, and you must have a lot of data coming in. In doing Perkins' slide, one of the things is data analytics, and just now I heard this analytics terms multiple times already. So how do you see data analytics changing the way the insurance business do the branding, product design, and customer experience? Can you share with us some of your...
Sure, and I'd probably add to the point that Sukwar talked about there about, I think this is just an evolution. I think, insurance is fundamentally based on the understanding of your data and using that data, whether it was to create the pricing or rating tables in the past, and now driving more into some other areas. I think what's very critical in this space is there is such a plethora of data that's accessible internally within the organizations, and when you start looking at the external data sources, I think at the core of this you've got to be really thinking about what is it as a business. What's the objectives that you've got? What are the goals that you have? What are you trying to achieve? And try to think through the use cases of, well, what is the data that I need? What are the insights they need? And what are the capabilities I need, not necessarily technology-wise, but people-wise, to be able to analyze that, create the insights, yes, but what's more important is about how you turn those insights into actions within the field and how you embed those into the daily operations and activities of your sales and distribution people, of your underwriters, of your claims experts. So I think for me, one key point I'd make is about being very clear and targeted about what you're going to do, because there is so many different technologies, different ways of approaching this, so much data available that I think you've really got to be focused on that. I think the other part of it, and this is a theme I'm seeing across all of sort of new technologies, is the need to have the IT experts who understand what's possible now, what capabilities can be brought to business users, working much closer with business users, and having business users much more understanding their capabilities of technology now, especially in this space of bringing external data together with the internal data and creating insights that we've never been able to do before, whether that's bringing things from social media data, whether that's bringing things from these multiple agencies across countries I know I read something about sort of crop and weather patterns in the US and how insurers have been using that to create not just insights in terms of customers, but also streamlining their processes so that they can really provide a better service to the customer. So this whole thing of bringing, I think it's about being business users being more tech savvy and helping them be there, but having IT professionals that are more passionate about getting involved in what the business is really trying to do, and then being able to get much closer so that we get the right things done. Because I think the fear, I think Hank touched on it before, is that there is so much you could spend your money on here that you really got to work out where you're going to add the value.
Wow. Any comments from the other panelists? No? Okay. Well, thanks for sharing the experience. You mentioned information. And I watched the James Bond movie yesterday. And it's so much on information. There's one big splash screen, information. So by controlling information, we control the world. That's what the Spectre organization is trying to do. My next question is for Helen. Helen, you have been the head of business transformation before you become the CIO. What process do you think insurers need to further develop to improve the customer experience?
Yeah, so in my current role, I'm overseeing operational transformation as well as IT. And I think that was an important step for QB in Asia Pacific to combine the two. Previously, it was quite, operations was quite separated from IT. So it kind of seems obvious, but that is making a difference. In terms of my focus, typically we've thought about our business in functional areas, so claims, underwriting, etc. We're changing that to think about the customer journey through the organisation. They don't care which department they're dealing with. They don't care that we've got different systems to support potentially different processes. So that's a really key focus for me in terms of how we shift that focus to the customer side. The other piece, touching around Matthew's point on IT professionals needing to be more at the business front face now. As an IT team, we basically have people involved in the business development process throughout discussions with a number of our partners, and that is really key to make sure that we understand what people want from our systems, and B, that we enable our business sales leaders to have that backup in terms of what our technologies and processes can support our customers with.
Thank you. Any comments from other panelists on process?
No, I support Helen's comments around this integration of the operations and IT piece. I mean, that's essentially what my role's about as well, is bringing that end-to-end view of the whole customer journey. And I think whenever we're going into any new technology, the first thing we really focus on and talk about is, okay, let's look at the process from a customer point of view. And we spend a lot of time going through that, trying to understand how best to do that. I think we want to get more into looking at things like service design and trying to understand how customers or our intermediaries are using the technology, but also how they are operating their processes, so that we get that as simple and as easy to do as possible. But that integration of operations and IT and the closer connection, not just in the creative process, but also in the execution through agile or scrum methodologies of business users really being involved in the development phase and IT users in the creative and requirements phase is critical.
And I think some of the digital platforms that we've released are enabling us to understand more about how our customers are interacting with us, which parts of the process they're struggling with, how long things are taking, where we're losing them in the process, so that the insights we can gather from those platforms that we're putting out as well is feeding back into how we optimize our processes and how we enhance our digital platforms as well.
Interesting.
I guess I share a bit of what Helen said. Now IT have to be more sort of client-facing. In fact, I once heard that IT people have hearing problem and speech problem. Hearing problem because we don't listen. People tell we don't listen, and secondly, we speak a different language. And I remember I was in Thailand and I have to give a presentation. I deliberately make an effort not to use one single IT term, and interestingly, right, they all listen to me. And I'm quite sure if I come, and in fact, I spend millions and millions on technology that they're not interested in. But I didn't mention one word. I spent my 15 minutes just talk about what it means to them. And interestingly, right, they all listen. So, because I need to prove to them that I don't have a hearing problem and I don't have a speech problem. So.
At this point, I would like to open the floor. Are there any questions that anybody in the room is anxious to ask the panelists? Before we continue, yes?
Hi there. I've got a question addressed to both Matthew and to Sukhwar. Matthew, you had a very interesting, I guess, underlying theme about talking about digital and intelligence. There's a lot of people doing it, but does it actually provide an outcome for the business? I guess my question is, in your experience, are you seeing a lot of companies putting the cart before the horse, doing a bit of a case of keeping up with the Joneses? And my next question on top of that is, how should the business change? Should IT become more about the business, or should the business become more about the IT? And that's to all panelists as well.
Okay, no, thanks for the question. I think there is a danger, and I'm sure many organisations are probably spending money on things that they'll regret going forward. But I also think to an extent we have to do that, because I think that for me a concept of trying a few things, not spending too much money on it, and be prepared to fail on a few things, I think is part of the journey here. Because I don't think anybody has the answer of what in each area is really going to work. So I think the sort of trying several things, be prepared to fail on some things, but through that find out where you're going to get the value. But I think that you have to ask yourself as you enter that journey is what really is the customer willing to pay for and going to pay for, or what value can we get from it as a business, and being as solid as you can around that before you enter that journey. And on the second point around, I mean, I don't think it's a case of I think it's a case of just the business and IT coming more together. When I look at what I want from my IT folks, I want them to be inquisitive about what the business is doing. I want them to challenge what the business is doing and get more involved and interacting at all points in the journey with the business. And I think it's a great point about not talking in IT terms, not just talking about, well, it's the Internet of Things or digitalization or big data or cloud this, or it's really getting into the mindset of how the customers are thinking, how the business is thinking, helping those business leaders really understand what does this technology actually do and what can it do, and going through iterative processes of whether that's in pilots or in kind of incubation or innovation labs to really think that through.
I want to share that point on business become more IT. I don't know how many of you actually have, I have CEOs come and say, oh, by the way, I had a party last weekend, and all my kids' friends are using this. Why aren't we doing that? So that's business thinking they're becoming more IT savvy. And to me, the way I deal with it, right, they deal with it because they're definitely challenging me. Why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you making all my applications mobile? I actually beat them at their own game. I said, no problem, I can do it all, and this is how much it's going to cost. And what I mean is I get challenged quite often these days, because with mobile phones, they can Google everything. A lot of CEOs, a lot of users think they know as much as you do, and they'll come and challenge you. And I must say, I usually tell them that we can do it, no problem, and this is how much it's going to cost. If you're going to generate that revenue, give me the go-ahead, I'll go ahead and do it.
But the challenge is obviously still that you need to explain why it costs so much. I think that's one of the challenges. It's not only a joke, but I think that's a serious issue. If you look at the perception that most of our users and also our managers have about IT is, and that's obviously also something that we need to ensure, is the front end is going to be extremely simplistic. If you look at the reason why we do mobile, whether it's for customers, for agents, for distributors in our context, is to make sure that they have a as easy as possible way to do their business. So the visible part for our managers, our bosses, is extremely simple, and therefore their perception will probably be, okay, it's very easy, quick to implement it. They don't understand, and indeed we need to find ways to explain to them that there is a lot of things happening behind the scenes. If you look at data analytics, big data and whatsoever, that's a very abstract concept where I think it's very difficult to explain to a senior person what actually is required in terms of distributed architectures, in terms of complex algorithms or whatsoever, what you actually need to do behind the scenes to eventually get a very simple, effective answer, and why you eventually need to spend a lot of money on that. So I think that's for a lot of people in IT, CIOs, the big challenge. How do you make sure that, despite the fact that the solution that you eventually present is very simple, you still can justify that you need a long journey to set up all the IT capabilities and indeed also spend a significant amount of money.
I think there's another area, and that is, I think, for example, a lot of these users, right, there's a difference between rolling things out to consumers and rolling things out in a corporate world. Because consumers, right, if you have any problem with an app, you're not going to sue Samsung or iPhone. But if a corporation roll out something and the client has a problem with it, right, we'll run into various E&O. So I think, again, educating them, there's a difference between consumer deployment and a corporate deployment, kind of bring them back to the ground. Okay, by the way, what I'm using now doesn't mean I can do it in the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, especially if the internet so prevalent today, a lot of people are very relaxed on security. Yeah. And in banking, insurance, or financial services, security, in fact, is a big issue. Once you have a security breach, all the customer confidence is gone, and they go back to their traditional channels.
Well, yeah, and also I assume everybody in the audience knows what GN16 means, Guidance Note 16. But if you look at the expectations now on financial need analysis and all the information that needs to be validated by our distributors, and the fact that our customers need to explicitly give consent and confirmation that information provided is, or let's say the product that is offered is eventually assigned to the funding. And you look at the way that needs to be implemented, absolutely not possible at this point in time to do that with all the advanced technology, because eventually the requirement from the regulator is a customer needs to handwritten on a form, put some confirmation in place. Question, how do you digitalize that? Not so. I think also on the regulatory side, there are still a few barriers that we need to overcome, and we need to discuss with the regulators to ensure that all these great technology eventually are going to be effectively implemented.
Well, I sit on the Technology Development Committee of the Hong Kong Privacy Commissioner, so we have a chance to actually look at all this new technology that comes in, like Google Glass, drones issue, and it's a very difficult one. Any other questions from the audience?
Well, I have a question for Matthew. In fact, this question actually not too related to IT. I apologize for that. It's something to do with insurance. Now we talk about, well, actually something to do with IT. We talk about cloud and big data, blah blah blah. I think it's all this is quite a fancy words for the insurance. But do you, what we just mentioned about the data privacy, and when it's coming with the very strong data privacy over clouding the insurance industry. For example, when a person submitting a claim, okay, for a medical claim, and normally insurance company, the common practice is to get data from other insurance company. What's the past medical history of a certain person making a claim. But nowadays, because the data privacy and customer challenge insurance company asking for that kind of information. And so insurance company will not be able to get this data and have to deal with only one source of data is the claimant, the customer submitting the claim. Now, it looks like this is going to be coming very strongly into Hong Kong. And to some extent, 200 years of insurance, history has to be rewritten because of this data privacy. And all this data doesn't help. All this technology doesn't help. And then the medical insurance becoming very expensive because the product has to price such a way that you can only deal with, you cannot check the history of the person. So the challenge is if the person making a claim of nose bleeding, for example, and you cannot check whether this person has a high blood pressure or has a feet problem because this nose bleeding is just the top part of the body. So I wonder, Matthew, you're dealing with Asia Pacific. Is that all happening around the region as well? And this is actually quite worrisome for the insurance industry, especially in the medical insurance. If that case, I mean, that privacy challenge get to win in the court, I think will be forever change, our industry.
Okay, well that's quite a question. I think that's fine. That's fine. No, I think as Hank said, I think everyone. This is not just an insurance issue around data privacy and data protection. I think this is across multiple industries, and I think companies, individuals, and regulators are struggling with how best to deal with this, and certainly in some countries around the region, the regulators are really struggling to understand how best to protect customers and make sure that we have in place policies or laws or regulations that address that. And that creates a huge challenge, I think, as Hank said, in terms of how can you define processes that work for you as a business, but also work for customers and individuals as well, and try and leverage technology to do that. One point I'd say is I think at the moment it's because it's an evolving landscape. This is a very, very difficult thing to nail down, and I think as executives within the insurance company, we have to take on board input from our legal and compliance teams. We have to have regular discussions across industry and come to some conclusions about how best to deal with this. I think the second point I'd make is around, I think the principle of what's at the heart of this is around protecting customer and protecting their data so it's not used for inappropriate purposes. So I think there's dialogue with customers and getting their consent and things, and how to make sure we're getting the consent for the right things so that we can access data, and making sure they understand that that's really about how we are going to help them and how we're going to be able to serve them is critical. And I think the third piece I'd probably add comes back to the big data piece. So where you can't access specific data and information, I think it's about how do you use data and analytics to and create predictive models around, well, if I can get all that data together, I can take a view on whether what outcome to take based on a set of circumstances. Now, I might get that right or wrong, but hopefully if the predictive models are done well and they're continually learning, you're going to get that more right than you get wrong. But this is certainly a challenging area, I think, for customers, for businesses, for the insurance industry, and for regulators, and it's just going to continually evolve, because the amount of data that is being of your customer data, your own personal data that is shared and available in multiple places is just growing rapidly, and there is no way I think any company can put hand on heart and say we've got that all secure and encrypted and you can't access it. So this is going to be an evolving thing that everybody's going to have to focus time and energy on.
Probably the key word is trust, whether it's about customers or regulators or even our internal staff. I think the moment you are able to create an environment where people trust each other, whether it's a customer trusting the insurance company because indeed the data that's being provided is not being abused, but it's used to better service the customer or to do better product development. I assume just like regulators, privacy commissioners, they usually go through these cycles where if something bad happens, look at the octopus incident in Hong Kong some time ago, that's where regulators start to panic and they put a lot of additional expectations, controls in place. And then the moment things stabilize again and people see that you start to behave and you create this trust with parties, then usually people become more relaxed and open for enabling capabilities, for instance, by use of technology. So I think the moment we are able to implement these kinds of capabilities, technologies, and ensure that there is trust in the people that basically use them, then I think we're on the right track.
I also want to share that, because I think some of you might remember, I think 1st of July, was it last year, I think? Singapore has got the change of data privacy law. And because of that, we have to change something. And what I got to understand right, the privacy law isn't about not collecting data, but it's about not collecting data that you don't need for your purpose. So I still think, the law is there to protect the customers from not leaking information that you don't need for your business. And secondly, it's about consent. And that is right. You're collecting data that customers are giving consent for you to collect collect those data. So you make sure that whether it's technology, whether it's operation, make sure you align with those principles, that you only collect what you really need for your business. You only collect what you've been given consent to, right? I think business can be as usual.
I think as well, we shouldn't underestimate that customers will be willing to provide data if they know, if there's an incentive for them to do so. So if it's going to reduce their premium or have some other
advice you can claim.
Exactly. So I think
anything.
exactly, as long as they know we're keeping it secure and they understand what we're using it for or attempting to use it for, I think we'll be surprised how many customers are willing to provide that. And then obviously, I think most insurers have a lot of data on their existing customers that they don't use properly to build into these predictive models yet. So as well as incentivizing people to give us more data, we need to make sure we are actively using that, what we do have, as well as all the external sources available to us.
And some of the data privacy principles are actually mandated by the Privacy Commission. I've gone to their website. There are 6 data protection principles. And some of the things that we mentioned already, consent is one. The other one is don't collect excessive data. Third one is the consent has to be given on specific purpose. So if I give it to company A for marketing purposes, they cannot sell that information or share the information with somebody else and do something that is not intended without my consent. But I think it takes time for the consumers and also the insurance company to work together and probably lobby the government that to focus on what's practical, what's not practical. Right?
Yeah, and I think we need to look at the intent of what it's trying to do, as we've said, rather than coming up with really extreme solutions to get a tick in the box. We need to be challenging and demonstrating that we have things under control, we know what we're doing, we'll keep the data secure, and we'd like to collect this data for the following reasons. I think that's a more compelling argument than just shutting everything down and saying, oh, we can't do that now because of this change in regulation.
We have a minute and a half left. I just want to do a wrap-up question for each of our panelists. Is what do you see as the IT priorities in your industry over the next 16 months? Some of you, Hank?
I think to work on a digital strategy, taking into account all the technologies together with the business. So ultimately, it's the management team that need to work closely together to determine, both on the sales side and the operational side, what are the priorities for our business, what makes most sense, where's the business case, and to develop a plan and eventually implement that.
Okay, Matthew?
Yeah, probably 3 things. Again, the digital, the interaction between customer, intermediary, and ourselves, and having that as integrated as possible. But as we've been talking about, really focusing on the areas where we can add value. I think progressing the data journey in the right way, both in terms of business capabilities to do the analysis, create the insight, and act, but also the IT tools around that. And thirdly, it's the cultural shift I've talked about in terms of really getting IT people who are curious and really want to engage and challenge and be really working at all points of the journey with the business and helping the business to be more tech savvy and to stop asking the challenging questions because they already know the answer.
Major focus for me is on how do we leverage the digital technologies we've already implemented to make sure they work fully together throughout the value chain and again, as I mentioned earlier, through the whole customer journey. Other focus area for me is on robotics and process automation, and that is what I see is the best way to bring together the very spread out number of countries that we have to look after and help to standardize through that.
For me, I mentioned earlier, I think business analytics, anything that can retain customers, generate more revenue, and promote cross-selling is actually very, very high on the business list. I think another thing that we started this year is operational efficiency. I think traditionally, insurance, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of manual work. I think the business already asked us whether we can get rid of all paper records. So digitizing, I mean, in fact, interesting, we have to keep things for 7 years. So, and we've got thousands and thousands of boxes. I think we're in the process of gathering all of them. So digitizing all the information and then putting a technology platform where you can retrieve them and index them and easily. And then finally, whether we can share it and collaborate around other regions.
Thank you. I think our time is up. I just want to thank our panelists for an excellent sharing session. Thank you.